Everyone, Dr. Alan Miner from UAC with our month's masterclass. And we're going to be talking to Dr. Josiah Fitzsimmons today here in just a minute. But we got some housekeeping first to take care of. First, next month here in September, we have our New York event, Ultimate Intention, coming up. It's our biggest event of the year. I think we're just about sold out on our room block. We have Gary Vaynerchuk's COO is speaking to the group, along with some awesome presentations from people inside the group. And also our board has come up with a mastermind, a workshop we're going through in the theme of the event that is really going to be phenomenal. So also Friday night, we're actually rented a beautiful space and looking over the city where we're going to do the event that night into a cocktail hour, jazz band. So, and then the next day, Saturday, we're overlooking Central Park from the hotel. It's going to be, I think, our best event in a while. So first, before we get in with Josiah, our sponsor for today's masterclass is Aspen Laser and Theralite. You guys all know Mark Murdoch. Here's the commercial. Is your current laser falling short in treating tough patient issues? Aspen Laser and Theralite have the solutions you need for quicker, longer lasting results. Guys, here's what I like about Mark. He offers a no-risk complimentary demo. So he says, line up 10 or 15 of your toughest cases. He flies out. He pays for it. He sees them, treats them. Wow. And if you're not wowed, then they actually pay you $500. But that's how he sells this. I mean, people see the results and they buy his product. And, you know, to me, that's like the marketer who doesn't charge you till the people are in the door. I love that way of doing it. So if you want more info, reach out to Mark Murdoch, 214-641-1827. All right, Dr. Josiah, you know, you're I love you, man, because you've been in UAC for as long as I can remember. You don't always come to a lot of stuff. And interestingly enough to me, you kind of reinvent yourself and then pop up, and then I don't see Josiah for a while, and then he reinvents himself, and reinvent's not quite the right word because you're still doing all the things you were doing before, but you know, you're growing your empire. And so Josiah, you know, UAC, I think the people we attract the most you're a great example of this. They're people who show up, who've built a successful clinic. They've hired coaches. They've figured out what they want to do and they've accomplished that. And now they're kind of looking around saying, well, now what? So many people come into UAC at that point, like, all right, I built a successful clinic. What's next? Do I build it even bigger? Do I do other clinics? Do I do something else? And I've watched you evolve, Josiah, through building, you know, a massive clinic and then evolving into Lucro, which is this really interesting accounting business that you do. We can get into, and now the last one you've gotten into real estate and some investment on that side of things, sort of as a syndicate kind of a thing. So we'll get into that. The theme of New York and where you're going to tee this up, Josiah, is it's ultimate intention, but it's around the intention of innovation. And so where I really want to dive into you today is areas in any of these businesses where you've really gone out of the box and innovated something. And I know a lot of times I've seen you do both. I've seen you follow other people's blueprint and learn and apply that. But I also know at the level of success you've had, Josiah, you don't just stay in that lane. You tend to then probably pivot a little bit, innovate. I mean, I don't remember every time the number's bigger if your clinic's at 5 million or 8 million, or I always hear some large number. You know, that's not what you're learning from those coaching groups. I had a similar thing back in my day. I grew to 1,000 a week, and all the coaching I had kind of really fell apart at 1,000 a week. And that's how I ended up in UAC. I was trying to find a group of people and I knew it really wasn't coaching. So innovation, that's what we're drilling down on in New York. What's the first thing that popped in your mind in your empire when I talk about like really your best innovation story where you just did something different and it really worked out well?
Oh man, yeah. That's a great question. You know, you brought real estate up, for me that was a big revelation of not paying tax. I haven't paid taxes, in quite a few years. I don't remember the last time I paid taxes, maybe 2018, maybe my like second year in practice. And so yeah, that there's definitely evolutions and innovations along the way, and I think that's something that I've always tried to figure out what is that next number one thing. The one I really want to focus on for today's call, I think is going to bring home the most for everybody listening, is what I call it the number one stat in the entire chiropractic profession that no one tracks. And this was a revelation for me in my own clinic, because I'm trying to get the most out of my team members and I'm trying to fill their schedule up. And team members that I had at the time were coming back and saying, "We can't keep up, like you're putting more on the schedule than we can do," And I was just like, like you came, Dr. Allen, from a high volume, clinic, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" There's no way. I was like, "I want you to go back and I want you to report back to me." I would say, "How long does each appointment take? How many hours are you working? How many hours are you available of your working for seeing patients? And then, like I said, for each of the different appointment types that you see, how long should those take?" And so I had them all do this process where they calculated how many of every appointment type, they could see, how long each appointment type took, and then how many available hours they had. And so I came up and I coined it the percentage of what is your percentage of schedule that's filled. And so, to my disdain and horror, I realized we're only about 40% filled. And my team members thought they were 200% filled. And
I've had that
so,
same issue. It's, it's gut-wrenching as an owner, isn't it? And, like, "I'm so busy," and you're, like, going through your lens, you're not even starting to get a little bit busy, but that happens a lot. I don't think you're touching on something. If anybody's had associates, I was the guy bent over adjusting 750 while my associates were seeing 250, 300, and back then I thought, "I'm gonna show them how by outworking them," and then you realize they never, they probably just went, "Look at this sucker. We're gonna sit back," like, he does all but there I remember having that frustration, so that's interesting I don't know if I've ever really heard anybody put a number or quantify that.
yeah, so now it's actually one of the number one, if potentially maybe I would say the number one stat in our clinic that we report on a weekly basis. So we call it percentage of schedule filled. And so first of all, what you do need to do is calculate what your capacity is first. And so this is where everyone listening to this right now, I would say pull out a pen, pull out a piece of paper, like let's do the work
Do you
right
break it
now so
into
you can have some immediate action.
Do you break it into categories? Because right away we have adjustment. We know our adjusting volume. We know our new patient volume. I'd imagine as you add complexity like other therapies that you might have some layers to this.
Exactly. Yep. Every appointment type should have its own capacity. And so
Mhm.
capacity is really coming down to the length of the time for that appointment, the team members available, the rooms available, and then potentially, any equipment that might be necessary or hours that your office is open. So you have these different bottlenecks or parameters. So the easiest way I always say is just like, don't change anything. Don't change your team members, your hours, your space, your equipment, anything right now. All we need to do is just figure out your baseline. What are you currently doing? So obviously the easiest one for most doctors is new patients. So that's what I would say. Let's just start with that one. For example, most doctors I would say, well, hey, first of all, how long does it take to see a new patient? Most doctors are going to say 30 minutes up to 60 minutes, depending on the office. And so let's just make it easy math. They're open 20 hours a week. They can see one new patient an hour, 20 new patients a week, would be the weekly capacity for new patients, in this example. And so there's 4.3 weeks in a month. 20 times 4.3 is 86. So that's the new patient, capacity is 86 new patients a month. And so then I would say, well, what are you currently averaging number of new patients per month, you know, over the last 6 to 12 months? And so I've done this calculation now with all of our clients, on multiple webinars, probably over 1,000 doctors that have done this calculation across all appointment types. The average we found in the chiropractic profession is 20% filled.
Yeah.
And so in that example right there, like I said, let's say they have 20 new patients a month. Well, their capacity is 86. 20 divided by 86 is 23% of schedule filled. And so you can do this across all your different appointment types, but I'd highly encourage everyone on this call, like I said, what is the number? Like this is the way I think about it for new patients. Let's just say you have a lot of people don't even know. But I say, hey, you have 1,000 people standing at your front door all next week, just waiting to get in for a new patient. You don't change your hours, your staff work any more than you currently are. How many of them could you actually let through the front door next week and process, as an initial day one new patient in your office? What is that number? Times it by 4.3, that's your capacity. And then what's your historical average? And so, like I said, across all appointment types, you can do this on, first figuring out your hours, your availability, those bottlenecks, like I talked about just a few seconds ago. How long does the appointment take? And so the average we found is about 20%. So what that means is whether you have a 20% full schedule, a 50% full schedule, 100% full schedule, Alan, does your rent change? Does your utility bill change?
One
Does
of
your
the best, my
payroll
favorite things about a chiropractic practice is it
does your
is
payroll
such fixed.
change? Yeah,
Our overhead is so fixed compared to most other brick and mortars other than what, face paper? Once everything's in place, there's not much variable expense, so it's always a funny question when you talk about margin too, because it's like, well, it depends. If your overhead's 30,000 a month and you're not making that versus if you're making 100, that like margin's kind of an interesting concept, profit margin in chiropractic, because you have this fixed operating expense to run the business.
100%. So it's like, hey, if you're at 20% full or 100% full and most all your expenses don't change, let's say in this example, except the cost to acquire new patients, you know, then that should be your number one goal of your business is to maximize your schedule. So I have a very, very basic framework. If you want to scale, like I've scaled my clinic to, hopefully it'll be about $8 million this year in our one location in Iowa. My basic framework is this: maximize your schedule, expand, and repeat. And that's really all it comes down to. When I say expand, is it team? Is it hours? Most of the time it's that. I mean, I got to 5.5 million in an 1,800 square foot space. So, usually it's not space. It's either better team members, more team members, increasing your hours, but really from the front end to understand, well, how much can I spend to maximize your schedule? That's where a lot we start going into some of that financial data that we help you with Lucro. But do you know your lifetime value of your client? Do you know your profit margin? You know, and then what is your percentage of schedule filled? And
How
so
about
that's like the most basic framework for scaling, is knowing these like very primitive stats.
Josiah? We're going to come back to real estate because you can't tee up this group talking about not paying tax and then not coming. But before we get to that, um, talk about how you leveraged other services to increase price points. Because you didn't. I don't know what you started. I'm guessing you probably charged 40, 50, 60 bucks an adjustment when you first opened your doors. 30.
Hmm.
I don't know if you did family plans. I think you came out of the amp. You came out of the amped crew, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of famous for big family plans, lower margin stuff. Did you start there?
We started off, we were about $45 a visit. Yeah, now we're about, for adjustments, now we're about 75 for an adjustment.
Yeah, I've been saying that on social media that Fred Bard used to say price of a stamp, 78 cents, $78. And I'll tell you now that the price of staff has gone up so much, it's the single biggest metric. It's amazing how many chiropractors are still at 30, 40, $50. They have not moved with inflation. Starbucks has, jumped 50% in the last couple of years, and chiropractors not held pace with that. And take a
Right.
basic 150 person a week clinic and go from 50 to $75 on your adjustment, so you're in line with inflation and that stamp principle. That's a couple $100,000 your bottom line. All of a sudden, you can afford to pay the better CA,
Yeah.
hire the A player, associate doc, and it's interesting fighting that. But
Well, real quick on that. I
let's,
want to give this is my like
yeah,
mental thing that I figured
please.
out with increasing prices. This actually changed my headspace around increasing prices,
Yeah,
is exactly like you just thought. It doesn't cost any more to deliver a $50 adjustment or a $60 adjustment or a $100 adjustment. There's no additional expenses to deliver a higher cost adjustment. And so the easiest way that I really like blew my mind when I realized this is that just take your profit margin, for example. That's the easiest way I like to think of it. Let's say you're charging $50 a visit and you have a 20% profit margin. Okay, so you make it
$10.
$10 a visit. If you go from $50, okay, to $60 a visit, you
Double.
literally just doubled the profitability of your entire business, obviously, let's say mostly adjusting company or clinic, you know, from increasing $10 in your adjusting price, you
Yeah.
literally could double the profitability of your entire company. So that's my hack is if you increase your price by your profit margin, then you double the profit of your company.
So let's, before we move on to the other services to move margin even higher, which I want to get into, but first, I think, one of the common pushbacks I hear, and it's a mindset thing. I've heard it from some UAC people like, well, I live in a small community. They can't afford. It's always the first answer. And, three of our clinics are in Albuquerque. We're closer to $100 a visit. And it's one of the lowest economic areas in the country. And so for us, we did it through value stack and differentiation. We started to add on home. We didn't want to put on ancillary other services. So we started, including Pete's Martoni's neck nest pillow and Tabor Smith's spinal hygiene product and um, supplements from Joe Esposito and from Steve Janopoulos. And we started adding courses and workshops. And so we created this stack. So it wasn't just a corrective, it wasn't just an adjustment like the joint, which is $19 if you're on a plan. It was an entire package to change your spine. And that helped us move our price point. And we didn't have to deliver all that stuff in the clinic. They went home with it.
Yeah.
So that was our approach. And, and then we just really doubled down on differentiating ourselves in the community as we're much more thorough. We specialize in back and neck pain cases that aren't resolved with typical means. And so we're going to get in and really do a corrective process. How did you handle when you first did one of your first bumps from 40 to whatever it was? Did you just say screw it and do it? Did you have some of that fear about will people pay it? Can you speak into that? Because I do think
Yeah.
a lot of people get in their head about the community not being able to pay it, and they're paying double for Starbucks. Starbucks doesn't get in their head about it. Why do we as chiropractors, and how do we work around that?
Yeah, I think it is that's where the whole issue is between the 2 years, no one batted an eye. Anytime we've ever increased the prices,
Us
we've
either.
never had we've never had any issues except the staff members who have the issue between their ears. Those are the only people that have the issues. The patients, the practice members have no, awareness. I mean, especially in the last, since COVID,
Yeah,
what I've told everybody is this is the greatest time in the history of the world to increase your prices. You know, if you haven't done
absolutely.
it, if you don't take advantage of it now, there's never going to be a more opportune time to do it. So yeah, I mean, get it past your own
We're
head, and everyone else is gonna have no issues with it. But the cool thing is, again, going back to math. I'm a big math nerd, and let's just say you have a 40% profit margin on a $50 adjustment. So you got to go from $50 a adjustment to $70 an adjustment. That will double the profitability of your entire business. Well, it's like if that doubles the entire profitability, then you would have to have your sign up rate or retention rate cut in half, and you would still be at the exact same level that you were
yeah,
at then, which you would obviously have far less expenses, from a team and management standpoint if you stay half the volume.
yeah.
So it's like the likelihood is even if you have a 10%, 20%, drop, in sign up rate, or retention, you're still going to be 80, 90% further ahead than you are currently.
Not to mention, Dr. Josiah, it just feels better, especially if for me, it was when I was on bent over the table knowing I was making $70, $80 versus 30, 40. It just made me feel better, more confident. Then, we used to do those family plans and, packing families in. And when you break down the cost per adjustment, we were losing $5 a visit. And we did that. And when we first raised those rates, boy, it felt better knowing, hey, I'm getting paid what I deserve and for being over a table. And the converse of that as an owner or founder is I'm paying my team members what they deserve for delivering the service.
Yeah. No, I love the profit stop loss calculation of just taking your profit divided by the number of visits that you have and really understanding like how much you're making per visit from a profitability standpoint. And that's really at the end of the day, like you're maybe charging 50, but if you're only making 10 because of all your expenses, that's all you're making $10 on delivering that adjustment. So it's like really understanding your true value, what we
I,
provide. And so I always tell people it's Jesus and chiropractors. We're the top miracle workers in the history of the world. I mean, what profession gets told that they're a miracle worker more often than a chiropractor. I don't think there's anything out there that's anywhere close to the amount of times
I
chiropractors have been
love it.
told they're miracle workers. So it's like if we providing the greatest value, possible, then the greatest value is worth a lot.
I think you're right. Here's a little trick for those struggling too. I forget who I heard say this, but tell people, hey, uh, we're raising our rates to this, but because you've been with me, I'm going to grandfather you in for the next 3 months before we raise it. And that's always helpful because then people feel like you gave them something. This applies a little more to people charging as they go or on smaller plans. But, it's like, look, we got cost is higher, everything's more expensive. People understand that instantly. So we got to raise our rates up to here. But because you've been with me, we're going to give you 90 days at the old rate before we grandfather you in. And that really has helped smooth out some of the docs that we've placed associates for who are struggling with this concept, just to have a little runway where they're giving their regulars, their loyal customers, a little something in return, takes them off the hook. Now, I'm going to change gears though. Back, remember the theme here: innovation, the intention to innovate. I'd say figuring out how to, and I know you, Josiah, you're conservative, so I know if you're not paying taxes, you're not. There's some weird stuff out there that we've all investigated with easements and uh what's the one with insurance? I was I was blank on the term where you insure yourself, basically.
Uh,
Captive insurance. That's like the number one flag to ask the IRS to come audit you, is set up a captive insurance policy. So
yep.
I don't think you're doing that stuff. I know I fell into this when I was buying buildings in New Mexico for all our businesses, that started doing cost segregation studies, and lo and behold, it was offsetting income. I think that might be part of your strategy here, but it's not exactly what you're doing. So let's get into the real estate side of it. What have you been doing to avoid taxes, and have you innovated there to keep more money in your pocket?
Yeah, I would say you kinda hit the nail on the head with kind of my evolution. I grew up low income, nicest car my family had was $500. We would take pop cans out of our neighbor's trash in the back alley, we would turn in for nickels, for recycling, to help pay the bills, and so, I had no concept of taxes until after my first year in practice, did over $1,000,000, and I understand what I gotta pay in taxes. I'm like, "Wait, what?" Alright, there's gotta be a better way. And so, I actually have I can probably get you a link, but I created an entire detailed spreadsheet handout that I can get you a link, for everybody if they want, where I kinda map out all the different tax strategies, that I utilize, but there's really obviously some very basic ones that if you're not taking advantage of, like the Augusta rule and paying your kids and some of these very, very basic ones, you gotta do those first and foremost. So that's always my number one thing is if you're not doing the basic, easy, ones, you gotta do those. Then you get into what you were just talking about, Alan, which is these fringe IRS dirty dozen, tax strategies. I actually paid a tax attorney $25,000 for a 3-hour meeting to learn all these different tax strategies. And I saved a lot of money, but what I learned is exactly like you said. I tried some of these strategies initially where I didn't know any better, and then I realized, oh man, these are a little fringe. I might get audited. I got to keep paying. There's a lot of like maintenance and expenses that these guys are making all this money off of me on the back
Yeah.
end that I'm also paying for. So it's like,
That
am
was
I really
also that
saving?
frustrated me on that stuff, because it was always like, all right, you got to put up more money to get a little back.
Yep,
But the money you put, it wasn't like you're buying an asset. It was like, well, you're going to send it to the government, so you might as well that never sat right with me. So I'm on the
100%.
same page with you.
Okay, yeah, so you're on the 100%. So the turning point for me was I've always been, you know, very always trying to learn. Constantly growing is really like my number one core value. And so anytime I meet somebody that's doing something in any area of life, and I know I can learn from everybody, but I had this guy that I met that was a local real estate developer, and I was like, "Hey man, can I just get coffee with you? I'd love to like understand how this works." And he starts going in and on and on about his business, and I was like, just shoot me straight. Like, how much are you like, what's your ROI on like the investing in real estate? And he's like, oh, like 3, 4%. And I was
Was
like,
he a commercial guy or a residential?
commercial, yeah, real estate development.
Yeah, like
And
big,
I
like
was like,
schools and like kind of public funded stuff, or more
um,
private stuff.
More private, yeah, so
Okay.
he would build out, like, he built hospitals and,
Yep.
dental clinics and, like, commercial retail strips, um,
Yeah, their
yeah.
margins are 3, 4, 5 if they're killing it, they might do 6%.
Yeah, and I was like, "That's awful." Like, I started looking into residential real estate, and I'm like, "Okay, I gotta put $100,000 down," let's just say at the time, for a $500,000 house, and after expenses, I'm gonna make, like, $220 a month in profit is, like, the math I did, and I was like, "$220 a month in profit? Like, the whole year, I'm gonna make, like, $2,500 on my 100,000, yeah, like 2.5%, cash on cash return."
Mhm.
I was like, "This doesn't make any sense." I was like, "There's gotta be something I'm missing." Like, there's gotta be some hidden, like, other benefits to these real estate guys, because it's like, then you hear Grant Cardone and here's all these other people like real estate's the number one thing that wealthy people do, and I just like didn't get it. I was just looking at the ROI, and I'm like, man, this is something is not clicking. And so I was like, I got to figure this out. I'm very, like I got to ask questions and flush it out and just keep figuring it out until I actually understand. Because there's these guys are super smart and they're doing something that I don't understand, and I need to understand what it is. And so I go deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's really what I realized, and you kind of brought it up, was really the number one value in real estate is depreciation,
Yeah.
especially for business owners like us, where we have, high profit margin, clinics, and we have this high amount of cash at the end of the year that we got to pay 30, 40, 50% taxes on. How do we reduce that as best as possible while getting an asset and a long-term strategy simultaneously? And so, Alan, sounds like you have some good experience on this, but depreciation, easiest way I, tell kind of explain the whole process is this: you buy $1 million property, typically a loan to value of 80/20, let's just say, for example. So you got to put 20% down to purchase a property, $200,000 to buy your $1 million property. Well, you depreciate not just the 200,000 that you put down, you depreciate the full cost of what you paid. So $1 million. Well, typically, a building is going to depreciate over an extended time period, from 27 to 39 and a half years. So on $1 million, you might only be getting,
Right. Yeah.
$30,000 or um, worth of depreciation that first year, and then you have taxes, as a portion of that. So then you're only maybe saving 5,000 bucks. But with a cost segregation study, typically you can accelerate or about 30 to 40% of the cost of the building in the first year. So let's just say it's 30% for easy math. 30% of $1 million is 300,000, and then let's just say your net tax effective rate is 40%, you know, then 40% of 300,000 would be 120,000. You put $200,000 down, you just saved $120,000 in taxes. So you just got a 60% ROI on your $200,000 investment in the first year. And so that's when I really realized, it's like, okay, if I put money in the stock, maybe I'm getting 8, 10%. If I can put this in real estate, get a 60% return on my money in the first year. I was going to pay 120,000 in taxes, but I bought a $200,000 building. So now I'm thinking the building only cost me $80,000 to buy $1 million property. So now I'm, buying way more properties for the same exact money that I was going to give to the government.
Yep.
Putting into a building and a hard asset that I have. Now, obviously, you need to have tenants, to cover your debt. But um, the biggest other missing factor that you need to really understand about this, and that's why I have about 60 Airbnbs, especially if you're first getting into real estate. There's a difference called passive and active in real estate. And so when you're passive in real estate, there's a passive loss limit of only $25,000. To be considered an active real estate professional, you need to do 500 hours a year in real estate. And so if you only have a couple properties, you're not going to be able to substantiate that, and be a full-time CEO, chiropractor, doctor running another business. So a lot of people either have their spouse, more involved with the real estate to be active in real estate, or with a short-term rental or an Airbnb. What the law says is if the average night stay of the property is less than 7 days, then you only need 100 hours a year to be considered an active real estate professional. And so then you can get those massive depreciation write-offs with short-term rentals a lot easier. And so that's just the first level. You got
Let me
depreciation.
let me hold on. Let me rapid fire some questions at you there.
Okay.
First, how do they 100 hours? How's that quantified? Is that you driving to the property to fix it, preparing
Yeah,
taxes?
any
How loose or specific are they in quantifying that?
yeah, anything that you could document, thinking about, talking about, looking on LoopNet, Zillow, anything that you could document if audited, you just have to present, what did you do for those 100 hours?
And do you have to file that somewhere to get certified as a real estate expert, or you
No,
just kind of
literally
can
just a
claim?
box you check on the tax return.
Yeah. How about here's where I've had hiccups. My I've owned a few residential properties. I did not enjoy it. Particularly, I owned them during COVID. I was managing them sales for what you said earlier. I got the depreciation, but the margin sucked so bad that I'd give up what little profit margin I had if I would have had it professionally managed. So I would manage it, but I didn't like kicking people out. What I love about owning all my own buildings is I'm a tenant. So, now we're paying rent back. And then if we can rent a few of the other spaces, it just feels, I don't know, in my mind, I'm paying the rent somewhere. I'd rather pay it back to my real estate company. But I will tell you, some of these buildings we've had now 10, 15 years, man, I freaking hate paying for stucco and new HVAC units. And it's a part of the game, paying for asphalt. So I'm curious, you have a much greater volume of real estate. Do you just hire a company and suck up the margin on it? Do you have a company internally that manages all, especially if you're doing Airbnb, you've got cleaning crews, you've got maintenance crews, you've got to have it posted, pictures. There's a lot of work into that. Can you talk about that side of it?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, Alan, and anyone listening, I would just really encourage you to, like, yeah, to change your mindset on the real estate. So when I talk about real estate, I feel like there's four main values that you're getting out of it. And what you're talking about, which most people think the most about, is the cash flow. And that to me is by far the least valuable of owning real estate. And so you have to have that mindset first. You're not trying to buy this real estate so it can pay your bills and put food on the table. That's not your goal of owning real estate. It's I could maybe even argue I could probably name four other things. It might even be the number fifth most valuable
I
reason of
I
owning real
think what
estate. So if that number
happens
is zero, I'm totally cool.
so I think that's good to hear you say. I think what's interesting is I'm on the back side of it where I got all the cost seg maxed out after the 5 or 7 years, so it's like I've kind of lost the front end, like, "Man, that was awesome not paying taxes." That was a few years ago, so now they're and I will give you a caveat, these properties are appreciating. More of my net worth is in the worth of those properties going up over 10, 15 years than everything else. So I don't want to minimize it, but thank you for adjusting that cash flow side of it because that's where it's just always a little demotivating looking at how little cash flow these properties throw off. So I appreciate your reframe on you got it. That's fifth down the line on benefits.
Yeah,
Stop
yeah.
looking at
So
higher up.
what I want to talk about, yeah, as you just brought up, is appreciation. So here's the thing that absolutely blew my mind when I first understood appreciation better. So you Google it, the last 100 years, real estate on average is like 4.97% annual appreciation. But here's the big difference is you buy, again, let's go back to this $1 million property that you put $200,000 on. When it says it's appreciating 5%, it's not not getting 5% on your 200,000 like you do in a stock market and you put in 200,000, you're hoping to go up to 5, 10%, right? You're getting 5% appreciation on the purchase price. So you buy $1 million property, now let's say 1 year later it's worth 1,050,000 and you put $200,000 in, 50,000 divided by 200,000, you just got 25% return on your money just on appreciation. Now it's unrealized, right, until you sell the property or you refi it, pull that money back out. But you're
And again,
literally, like I said, let's say year
let's
one, you're getting six. Yeah.
let's pause because people miss this. That 25% is the combo of how much the value of the property went up, plus the money you kept in your pocket that you didn't have to send off in taxes. That's how you're getting the 25%. Am I correct
No,
on
no,
that?
no, 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 no. That's just the appreciation value. The depreciation value could be 60% ROI in the first year. So you have
So
depreciation plus appreciation, then now you're at 85% year one ROI with those two. And
so walk sorry, walk
this is
us
with
through the
zero cash flow.
walk us through the 25% again then. So you bought it for a million, it's 150,000 a year later.
Yep, so you bought it for 1,000,000. It went up $50,000, but you only put $200,000 down. So you got $50,000 on a $200,000
I
investment.
gotcha.
50,000
Gotcha.
divided by 200,000 is 25%.
Using other people's money. Gotcha.
Exactly, OPP, yeah. Uh, so now you got 25% just like I said on the appreciation of the property, right? And so this is where appreciation of the property or finding undervalued, so residential property goes up based on this, comps in the market, other properties, that's going to set based on an appraisal. That's how your property is going to go up in value over time. Commercial is all based on what's called cap rate, and it's all based on how much money you're getting, net operating income for the property of the building. And so you can actually dramatically, massively alter the impact of the valuation of a commercial property by, like we're just talking about earlier, increasing prices, increasing rent rates, changing the status of a property. Like we bought a hotel, this small town, 10,000 person town. We bought this hotel, $695,000 for a 35 unit hotel. Remember, I'm in Iowa, right? And we go and we're like, hey, we're going to turn this into um, apartment complex with studio apartments. So we spend about $10,000 on each apartment to upgrade them and put little stoves and little kitchenettes and microwaves. And from buying it to doing that process took about 5 months. We took it to the bank and said, hey, we're going to be able to lease these rooms for X. We expect this amount of occupancy. They valued that property 5 months after we bought it for $695,000. They valued it at $2.2 million.
Did you pull any money out
Then
or did you leave it in and roll it?
yeah, so we bought it in cash originally, and then we went and we got a loan at $2.2 million, at that one, I believe was 75% LTV. So we got about $1.6 million loan, paid ourselves back the 700,000, and then we just got $900,000 in tax-free money,
Because it's a
we could go
loan.
put down and go buy a, $4.5 million property.
So how about the management of it, the back end? How are you handling that? Because you do have to handle all those leases, those renters. Did you start your own company? Are you outsourcing it to somebody? How are you handling that side of
Yeah,
it
I
as well?
outsource all that. I mean, that's not my expertise. I don't want to be in the property management business whatsoever. So, yeah, I mean, I would, again, you might be able to get a few margin here and there, fixing your own toilets and doing some of those things, but I don't think that's worth it. I think my time is much better spent, scaling my other companies and like I said, that's if you really have that mindset, like I said, depreciation number one, appreciation number two. Third one, is equity pay down. Someone else is paying your debt for you, right? So not only here's the thing people don't realize too, the building is appreciating, and then you're also simultaneously paying the debt down. Someone else is paying the debt for you. So your equity, like you're just talking about, Alan, is increasing in two different directions, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so,
How
yeah,
about, uh, have you partnered with people on these, construction experts, so to minimize your workload? Like if you're going to do a remodel, we did that with my wife's dance studio. Kind of a similar deal where we bought it, redid it, the valuation on it tripled. We're able to pull some money out of it. In that case, we manage it ourselves, but I can appreciate if you start doing this with some scale, it'd be nice to have a
mhm.
partner or maybe at least a trusted contractor. But how have you managed that side of doing these projects so you're not
No,
becoming a contractor?
it's a great question. You're 100% right. The number one issue you're going to run into with trying to do real estate is deal flow. And so if you're trying to find properties, in between patients at the end of the night on the weekends, they've already been picked through by 1,000 real estate agents or other professionals and so forth like that. And so you're not going to get, very good deals, especially value add deals, like that hotel property like I bought that was completely off market. So the way I've done it is I realized that very early on, like at the first I started looking, I'm like, figured out real fast after like 2 months. I'm like, nope, I can't do this. I don't have the time. I don't have the expertise. I analyze all these different properties. I need somebody to collaborate with. And so that's what I found is I have a commercial guy that does all the deals, finds them all, negotiates them all. He's a real estate agent. He gets a commission. And then I also partner with him 50/50 on all those deals. So if he does it, if a deal good enough for him, it's good enough for me. And then
So
I have
you
the
both
exact
put
same
in
thing.
you guys both put in equal cash on them too?
Exactly. Yep.
That's great.
And
I
then I
like
have the
that.
same exact setup with the residential guy as well. So it's like the benefit for that these guys that I work with, like I said, is they have someone they can do twice as many deals. They're also making commission on every purchase and on every sale, so they can get they're doubling that working with me as well. So it's been a really good win-win relationship where, I've found people that I really trust, and it's like we bought a feedlot for it can hold 4,000 cattle, and my partner found the deal. It was a sheriff sale. He's like, "I gotta go bid on this thing. It could go, up to 700,000. I gotta buy it in cash. Do you trust me to
That
make the right decision?"
that's
You know?
cash on the courthouse kind of a deal. Those are fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I was like, "I trust you." So it's like he couldn't have done the deal without me. I wouldn't have ever done that deal without his knowledge, so I mean, those partners
Yeah.
are harder to find than, is, but I mean, that's really been my kinda
Isn't
secret
that
sauce on
Did you
finding the
find him
deal.
through your chiropractic practice or outside of it? It's amazing how many of those people in my world came from
Yeah, both through my
practice.
clinic, yeah,
Yeah.
both through my clinic, yeah.
It's an unsaid strength of having a chiropractic practice is who you meet in the community, and, yeah, I've got some great stories about some of my investors and partners walking in the door as patients, becoming friends and learning from them, and, nobody talks about quantifying that side of the value of being in practice,
Mm,
and it's
that's
something
good.
I miss sitting in an office away from it now. I don't get that kind of, deal flow is not the right word because you used it. It's sort of almost deal flow in a different way of just being in your community on a regular basis, getting to know people.
Relationship capital.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Josiah, that ran long, but, we love your brain, love talking with you, and, I know a lot of people I suspect you're gonna get hit up by a lot of people in UAC, but you've always been so gracious with your time, so,
Yep,
anything else you'd like to if somebody's interested in Lucro, by the way, just to give you a plug for your time, if you're not doing your accounting through Josiah, what's cool about it I mean, you could probably give a better plug, Josiah, but sometimes because you didn't tell me any of this, it's a better plug. What I love about Lucro is you're aggregating data from lots of clinics. So it's very affordable to do bookkeeping. That's what you do for a clinic, but benchmarks. So when you plug people into your spreadsheets and formulas, they can start to see how their numbers are comparing to all of your other clients and how is their spending on payroll? How is their marketing spending? What's their profit margin? I think you're able to give some insights as a clinic owner and because of your group of clinics, your database of clinics you work with that your typical bookkeeper's never gonna be able to bring to the table.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's really what I realized as I was trying to grow is like I would need to understand my numbers and my data to make clear, confident, decisions with certainty. And my books are always behind. Even when I got them, I didn't know what I was looking at. So I was like, I got to solve this solution for myself. And then I had all these other doctors say, "How did you scale your clinic, to the $7, $8 million just a few years out of school?" And I was like, well, had extreme confidence with my decisions because I understood where to spend my money, what was working, what wasn't working, could make pivots, and grow. And I think that's, especially as chiropractors, we're very intentional with our hearts, our hands, but a lot of times we miss a lot of the data and the number analysis. But like you said, yes, super low cost. We're 450 a month. We do your books every single week, give you a report every single month of action steps you should take based off your financial data. And then, like you said, our big vision is to help advance the profession. Right now, we have about 500 million in annual clinic revenue in our software. Just launched last year. Will be over $1 billion. I'm sure of it in no time. We're onboarding a lot of big franchises and coaching organizations that are making us a required vendor for 40 locations, 250 locations, the one we're finalizing right now. And so that's going to really give amazing insights so you can compare your clinic to all the top performers in the country. What vendors are they utilizing? How are they scaling their organizations and all the numbers to really make, confident decisions like a true CEO should.
Yep. I love it. Lucro.com, is that where they find you?
Morelucro.com.
More Lucro, Lucro.
You got it, yeah.
All
It means
right.
profit in Italian, so that's the
I love
goal, to
it.
help increase the profitability of clinics by understanding their data and, um, in the long run, enterprise value if you wanna sell your clinic as well.
Yep. Awesome, Dr. Josiah. Love and appreciate you, brother. Thanks for your time, man.